Hi! In this video, I will dive into details about each piece in my AP Art portfolio, as well as sharing my thought process, inspirations, and personal experience. Hi, this is Fluffy! My name is Mayao. You can call me Mayo Goose. I am a self-taught digital artist and I've been doing digital illustration as a hobby since 2016. Without further ado, let's look at the written section. My response to the prompt is, how can I explore the artistic nature of chemistry and communicate my joy stirred by the dynamics of chemical reactions? How can I interpret science through my creative lenses with a touch of humanity? Essentially, my work personified chemical experiments. For the second prompt, I emphasized the experimentation of my portfolio. This is where it all started. Last summer, I was truly inspired by Niall's Red video. My favorite one is this weird reaction called Belousov-Zhabotinsky reaction. I'm gonna play a clip of the original experiment. If you're interested in the chemistry behind it, just stay here. If not, you can jump to the next timestamp.
It's called the Belousov-Zhabotinsky reaction, and it's one of the very few good examples that exist of an oscillating chemical reaction. Into this, I then added 1 ml of the ferroin. I swirled it around and it quickly went through a nice range of colors. The bromide ions quickly reacted with bromate ions, BrO3, to form orange-colored bromine. This reaction is between the bromate ions, the ferroin, and the bromous acid. The major effect is the oxidation of the iron in the ferroin, which brings it from its red 2+ form to its blue 3+ form, where the malonic acid and the bromomalonic acid reduce the ferroin back to its red 2+ state. The overall effect of them is the regeneration of some bromide ions, which allows the cycle to repeat itself. The solution here isn't being mixed, so the only way for ions to move around is by diffusion. However, the consumption of the bromide isn't perfectly even across the entire solution, and some points will develop a slight bromide deficiency. This creates a concentration gradient, and it causes the bromide ions in the surrounding areas to diffuse towards it.
This was my first attempt with character design. I love the color contrast of red form ferroin and blue form ferroin, as you can see on the top right. It inspired me to draw her this red and blue scrunchy shape sleeves. The orange-blue ripples of the reaction also reminded me of salmon, croissant, and sunwave, as reflected in her hair. Furthermore, the bromide ion led me to thinking of bromine gas, which has an interestingly dense texture and possibly most definitely toxic. So I used the color palette of chemical hazard and give her a warning sign area. Next, let's move on to the elephant toothpaste experiment. The chemistry behind it is the rapid decomposition of hydrogen peroxide using potassium iodide as a catalyst. I gave myself a few keywords to start the ideation: soft, lazy, melted, creamy, and fluffy. This is what I intuitively feel after seeing this experiment, and I want to apply it into my drawing. Her fluffy hair erupts from her head through a beaker as 2 ponytails. She's a ballet dancer because the eruption of the mixture reminded me of dancers lifting their legs. I also added the iconic hydrogen peroxide molecule as decoration. The little fairy sitting on potassium iodide is the personification of food coloring. In the middle of the process, I thought it'd be fun to draw ingredients needed for this experiment behind her to balance the composition.
That is insane.
I need to point out the technical inaccuracy of this piece. First off, the smoke is not realistic enough. In the experiments, the white smoke should intensively high instead of this diffusing kind. Additionally, the gummy bears won't have came out intact like a projectile motion because they must have been burned to death in the tube. Also, surprisingly, I forgot to draw the fire. Wow. These failures, not necessarily failures, but like inaccuracy, motivated me to put in more thoughts when ideating for my later pieces. Work 3 is a process photo. I used screenshots and annotations to explain the connection between my work and these chemical reactions. It is especially important for digital artists to document and show our work, inspirations, and thought process. If your software doesn't have built-in time-lapse feature, remember to screenshot your work at different phrases, such as ideation, sketch, line art, color, and so forth. Next piece is called Dancing Fire and is a personification of the copper flame test. This was the experiment that captivated me initially, but I later changed it to the general copper flame test because it's more well known. The chemistry behind this is the atomic emission. We ignite the hydrogens produced by aluminum and hydrogen chloride. The hydrogen combustion excites copper electrons, and when they relax back to their ground state, they give back their energy in the form of the beautiful blue-green color we see. This experiment reminded me of Ribbon Dancer, Floating Ghost, Aurora, and extremely dynamic and glowing hair. I personified this process in which Miss Copper Sulfate solution is burning her hand to initiate the atomic emission. This version with a Bunsen burner actually makes more sense. She sits on a cotton swab soaked in cotton solution like a witch. The flame from the Bunsen burner changes color and becomes her hair. But I was running out of time, so I had to give up this plan. I also used it to get familiar with After Effects. For work 6, I uploaded the process photo for work 4 and 5. It is pretty hard to show the connection between my arts and chemistry using pure text, so I included photos of the original experiment and some inspirations. Next piece is inspired by the golden ring experiment. These are the footages that are referred to during the creative process. This experiment mixes potassium iodide and lead nitrate, which are both colorless solution. If the solution is cold, the precipitate will consist of many small hexagonal platelets, giving it a yellow silky appearance. If the solution is hot, then the compound remains clear and crystallizes on cooling as thin but larger bright yellow flakes that settle slowly through the liquid. Lead iodide is a really strong reminiscent of golden glitter, hence the name of this experiment, the golden rain. Once again, I use keywords to guide my design: butter, puffy, pigment sink, burst, silky, and egg yolk jellyfish. I made many revisions to preserve the technical accuracy, and you can clearly see my struggle from the time-lapse replay. I even practiced drawing jellyfish in the middle of nowhere because the free falling of the injected solution reminded me of them. I soon realized the downside of not having a thoughtful character design before doing a high-fidelity illustration. I got really stuck and kept making revisions, but none of them seemed right. Eventually, I linked her hair with a diffusing solution and increased the free-falling distance by making the beaker longer. It makes more sense than hugging a floating jellyfish, and the composition is more balanced. Why am I so passionate about this experiment? Well, This was part of my end-of-year project for AP Chemistry. My teammates and I picked 2 experiments, snowing bottle and golden ring. Both of them precipitate when the temperature decreases. However, one is endothermic, absorbing heat from the surrounding to form products, and the other one is exothermic, releasing heat to form products. I did intend to do an art piece for the snowing bottle. I wanted to draw moths because mothball was one of the reactant. But I realized that it deviated too much from chemistry, and I didn't have time to refine it. That being said, I still include it in my portfolio to show College Board my process. I dedicated work 8 solely for the golden ring piece because it's a good demonstration of practice, development, experimentation, and revision. Since College Board doesn't accept MP4 time-lapse, I had to show my process visually. When I was doing labs, my favorite thing was to observe the random shapes and movements of diffusion. They reminded me of mushroom clouds and tree roots. I wondered, how would a beaker be like in atom size? A garden, a wonderland, or a battlefield? So I challenged myself to do a landscape to recreate the daydream that I had. Next one is a personification of the Purple Haze experiment. The chemistry behind this is the reaction between aluminum and iodine. When water is added to the iodine, the resulting acids dissolve the oxide layer from the surface of the aluminum, allowing it to react with iodine. The heat released caused the crystal iodine to sublimate, forming a purple vapor. The pink-purple flame indicates the production of aluminum triiodide, which appears as a white smoke tainted with iodine vapor. My initial ideation on my sketchbook was a sorcerer spilling purple smoke from a magic lamp, but I later abandoned this idea because it conflicted with the upward eruption of the smoke and doesn't have room to showcase the sparks and motions. Eventually, I landed on this version. She's a pyromancer who controls fires with her metal war fan. This is a metaphor of the reaction between aluminum and iodine. Her hair and flowy dress symbolize the purple smoke and pink fire. She stands on a petri dish like a rotary music box. And yes, I also animated her using After Effects. Next experiment also has some personal connection with me. It was a demo from our chemistry club back in 2021. I was really impressed and inspired by the dry ice bubbles emerging from the beaker and their foggy textures when they pops. This YouTube shorts on the right also inspired me to draw her a smooth, gel textured dress. To conduct the experiment, dry ice, aka frozen carbon dioxide gas, is dropped into soapy water. When the dry ice sublimates, the carbon dioxide and water became trapped inside the soap bubble. In my eyes, this experiment looks like a lady with fast-growing hair. She's popping her hair bubble, which transforms into a white fluffy bird. Work 12 is another process photo summarizing what I just said. Feel free to pause, but let's move on. The last piece is called Rise and Fall. I was reading a sci-fi called The Three-Body Problem, and I was inspired by this grand perspective on life. It mentions how lower dimension creatures cannot understand a higher dimension world. I went down into a rabbit hole and binged a lot of YouTube videos about 4 dimensions. This built my momentum and motivated me to pour my heart into my last piece. We are the observers of both the macro and the micro world. Lava Lamp resembles the galaxy to some extent. The wax blobs rise and fall, born and perish in a gentle dance, leaving no trace of their existence. Just like how stars, civilizations, and well, us ultimately end with. Here, I was disassembling the parts for my last animation project. This time, I want to learn using live 2D cubism to animate my illustration. Basically, I turned the illustration that I did for AP Art into a live 2D model. It was quite a learning curve, but animating my art piece and seeing it moving in my computer is very satisfying, especially the facial expressions. I also did a lot of experimentation on hair physics to achieve zero gravity. My expectation is that the hair would play floating animation during the idle mode and follow the hand movement with some lagged effects. Thankfully, the skills that I learned in After Effects, such as keyframes and curves, are transferable here, so that saved me a lot of time. I made 3 animations for now: idle, seriously staring, and surprised. These would assist the interactive elements on my web development projects. Sometimes the model does weird things and it was really entertaining. The next step is deploying it to my personal website using the official web SDK. Here I was testing the SDK and it worked. The model would follow the mouse movement and play idle animations. But I still need to work on the website code itself, fix some interaction bugs, and get it published through GitHub. I put in a lot of effort into this illustration because I want to demonstrate my growth. I was able to complete a piece of art with a more organized process. I used to rely purely on my ADHD spontaneity, which leads to procrastination and burnout. Having a structure helped me to build up momentum and allowed me to ease into creative process when I need to. For work 15, I included all of my abandoned ideas to show my experimentation and revisions. This aluminum mercury one was also inspired by Niall's red video. I tried to imitate the fragile texture in her dress and blending mercury elements in her fishtail dress, earrings, and viper. But again, I didn't have time to finish rendering it. I still included it in my abandoned idea page though, to show College Board the evidence of revision. This piece was my attempt for my previous inquiry into the unknown. I later abandoned this idea because it's pretty cliche and Elsa is probably gonna sue me. This piece was a documentation of my depression and insecurity. At that time, I felt like each fragment of my personality works independently, but they don't fit together. I could continue to be trapped in my emotion and being cynical. But this was not what I wanted. I wanted to create something that I will remain proud of after graduation. Something I'm comfortable sharing and willing to research for. That's why I picked chemistry, which exposed me to new things and served as a great distraction for my excess introspection. The rest of the selected works were practices that I did for fun over the summer. They didn't have a specific theme, and I just wanted to experience with the colors. And at the end, I want to be a little corny. Thank you, my classmates and art teacher Miss Wayne, for making this class a relaxing place to refine. Thank you, Shruti, for helping me to ideate and doing physics homework with me. Thank you, Claire, for reminding me to take my laptop charger and kept me updated with my English readings. Thank you, Julie, for motivating me to draw, giving constructive feedbacks, and doing random puzzles with me. Thank you, Sophia, for providing dry ice bubble footages. And finally, thank you, Mr. Miller and Ms. Zorns, for introducing me to chemistry.